Hi out there. Welcome. Poets, can I get a thumbs up if you can hear me okay? Wow, all thumbs up. This is going great thus far. um, hi everyone. I am Laura Buccieri, the Director of Publicity here at Copper Canyon, and I'm coming to you live from my home in Brooklyn, which is conveniently located across the street from a firehouse. So I apologize in advance for any sirens while I'm speaking. So thank you everybody for joining. We're getting ready for a live book launch reading with four incredible authors: Tyree Daye, Hyde, Jennifer Knox, and Alberto Rios. They're going to read from their gorgeous new and forthcoming books. So this is our fourth installment of our launch party live stream series. Following our spring events, this is a new way for us to connect with you all out there, our readers, and to celebrate wonderful new poetry releases in an age of pandemic. So we'll have another event for winter releases in February. But thank you for being here today, and I hope you'll continue to check out our live stream events in the future. It's really special being able to gather with you. So we plan to try and live stream this reading simultaneously to Facebook, and the event will be recorded and shared on our website. If those watching out there have questions or comments for the poets, you can look for the Q&A feature on Zoom and enter a question, and we'll get to those at the end if we have time. And if it would help you to see closed captioning, our truly wonderful intern, Catherine, is captioning this reading in real time. So you'll just need to enable the closed captioning feature on your own Zoom window. So as you may know, Copper Canyon Press is a nonprofit independent book publisher, and we've been entirely dedicated to poetry for almost 50 years. And you're tuned in to our launch party live stream readings, and we hope you will fall in love with these books and authors you're about to hear from. When you do, we encourage you to purchase their books through our bookselling partner for this event, Seattle-based Estelitas Library, which is a Black and Brown-owned community bookstore and library. We encourage you to support Estelitas by purchasing books through their storefront on bookshop.org. So start there, then search the title you'd like to buy, and then when you purchase the books in your cart, you'll be supporting Estelitas. And we'll drop a link in the chat now, and we're gonna go ahead and enter details on how to make those orders in the chat window. So while we're sharing the love, we want to say that we're so grateful for the support from our donors, our board of directors, and funders like Seattle Office of Arts and Culture, For Culture, and CLMP, who are providing crucial relief funding to arts organizations like ours so that we can keep poetry coming. And if you are moved to make a donation to help Copper Canyon Press keep publishing poetry, you can do so at our website, which is shockingly coppercanyonpress.org. So thank you so much. Again, welcome to those of you just joining. This is the Copper Canyon Press launch party live stream. So without further ado, I think let's go ahead and kick things off. So it's my immense pleasure to introduce you to our first reader, Tyree Daye. Today, Tyree Daye is reading from his brilliant new book, Cardinal, which pubbed earlier this month. Whiting Award winner, Cave Canem Fellow, and Kate Tufts finalist. Tyree Daye is a poet from Youngsville, North Carolina, and a teaching assistant professor at UNC Chapel Hill. He is the author of two poetry collections, River Hymns, which won the 2017 APR Honickman First Book Prize, and Cardinal from Copper Canyon Press. So I'll just let you take it away, Tyree.
Thank you all so much. I'm just gonna go ahead and start reading. Hold up the book here so you can see it. Bowland. I've lived on dirt roads that bent and ended at a gate of pines. The dust skipped up, did it make my mother look like a dream I've lived? On roads that drag through America, I've paced only them to the next town. The road we kissed on is gone. Rich folks buying up all the city in which we make do. I miss when Sonny could do a wheelie all the way down Person Street and no one would call the police because he was a part of the neighborhood, like the honeysuckle bush between 2 yards, and he was beautiful, not like a horse standing alone in a yellow field, but like a man is beautiful. Most of the little towns have a road nicknamed Devil's Turn, where someone's brother died on a Saturday night while Nina sang, "Tell me more and more and more," and then some on the caddy's radio, the moon the color of the oldest cardinal. Every road isn't a way out. Some circle back like wolves. You can't get lost on them and they won't lose you. Others wait for you to run out of gas, then come alive with what your mother said would take you. Every road promises something like a father does, but when you arrive, the town is empty and you wait like a child questioning everything, the road itself, laughing like a drunk man falling into a roadside ditch. The road I'm walking now is howling and full of moon. Hopefully it will lead to myself. Hopefully they'll take me home. I wanted to place an ocean. I tell my uncle's ghost, don't waste your time haunting white folks who owe you money. I try to give him my body, but he won't take it and pulls his wagon on. I began in fields near ponds where we laughed and fried fish. If someone were to sing, it would grow through each ghost and be heard as geese crossing overhead. The dead know the work they have done. And if they are not careful, their hands will stay in the shape of that work. My hands haven't touched cotton or tobacco. I haven't pulled small green worms or carried them inside with me, hidden in the body's doublings. I was only a child in harvested fields. When my people let the cotton sleep, there were no vacations. The fields of Roseville belonged to my kinfolk, dead and alive. And I don't know if my great-grandparents ever saw the ocean or fell asleep on the beach. The Mechanical Cotton Picker for Black Chicago Poets. It wasn't that they killed John Boy in front of his mama's small blue house and that no one called her Miss Bluebird anymore out of respect, though she never minded the name. It made her believe she'd fly off someday. Or that the sheriff let John Boy's body sit until even the baby stopped crying, their eyes filled with him, his body already going to marble, no one would be able to lift from their sleep. It was that we could feed ourselves then by getting down on our hands and knees to pick cotton, and most knew what a body smelled like blowing down a dirt road. When Chicago reached my ear, the war was full of bodies. They sent whole train cars for us Black folk. I read The Defender and waited to hide my face behind the curtains of a northbound train, and I prayed the train car would fly. The South truly don't want us to go. A Mississippi cop would catch a family disappearing behind a rainstorm and send them home, the clouds leaving 4 muddy fields at a time. I left like a season's first lover across a window, slowly like a southern sun diagonal on a work back. I wanted to carry my aunts to Chicago with me, like this obituary filled Bible, these plums I got saved, purpling in my bag. Miss Mary Mack introduces her wings. My name is Miss Mary Mack, Mack, Mack. You sing it, my name. I turned into a bluebird last summer. I flew through all the south, my wings are blue, and I touched the sky. At first, I decided I was never coming back. I took off my black house dress. I knew freedom was not the act of flying, but the steady beat of wings. It was my steady black, blue, and my blues were gone. I wanted to be a bird and became. Leave yourself all over. Teach me to love the way only the dead know. Sometimes I want to see you so badly, I dream myself full of the reddest wings. I do the things I promised my mother I'd never do again. You wouldn't recognize me now or the town. 3 highways run through old tobacco land. I'll weep all night for you, will not stop no matter the bright purple festivals, the fireworks that scare everything from the sky. On my way to visit your grave, where you're buried beside your lonesome son, who walked Youngsville all day like an angel no one would give proper wings. I wanted to see you in that small town, where our last name watered a crop of soybeans, labored under a white man's promise. I wanted to see you in that wide graveyard as a cardinal. When I arrived, I wanted there to be jubilee, chalk red feathers darting the sky like a little blood moon. I think I'll never be through with the dead, my altar full of whole other worlds. When you no longer ghost among your children, grandchildren, when you become fully angel, a bird I let loose in my house, will you still remember us and our jerry-rigged lives? I know it's hard work being dead. I don't know what happens to fields. I never left this clay. I built a man with it. He walks around breathing and drying out. I've made whole days out of fields. I lie in as a child. The woods around them have marked me with ticks behind my knees, scars like kisses by the smallest mouths. The train leaving Youngsville smells like my grandmother walking into the open air of a dream. Tracks all over America have bodies under them, still dreaming of mothers and babies. I found clay in the softest spot of me. I pulled it off. I molded it into a splintered myth, rode it down the hill generations long. So many thumbs pressed into me. Carry me. I followed the shimmer far down a road I still haven't found the ending to. I picked up my life. My mother sewn a map to the back of, so one day I lay it out and travel back to the flat land of eastern North Carolina. A map to land where my body will die, where my ghost won't ride the trains all night, count steps from liberty to home. I tried to find the ocean before I was covered in southern soil. I put my head underneath the Atlantic, swallowed so many memories. I'm filled with people. Someone has taught me to fly. Whichever way I flew, my inheritance couldn't be lifted from northeastern North Carolina's wet clay, its hands hardened around my already weighted ankles. My mother's mother planted hydrangeas where I wanted to place an ocean. Where I wanted to place an ocean, she grew me. I picked up my life, for it was the only one I had to pick up. How the body must pick itself up if no one is around to offer a rounded hand out of the snow that only buries. Stuck to my life were the same things I carry back with me now. My father's lying I've mastered and wear the way a field wears the bones of birds. The green tint of gin bottles my uncles made of their bare nights. My mother, the only reason I have something to pick up. Thank you all. Got one more poem for you. From which I flew. Only together, holding their hands in silence, can I see what a field has done to my mother, aunts, and uncles. The land around my grandmother's old tin roof has changed. I doubt she recognized it from above. How many blackbirds does it take to lift a house? I'll bring my living, you wake your dead. We have nowhere to go, but we're leaving anyhow by many ways. When they ask why you want to fly, blackbird, say, I want to leave the South because it killed the first man I loved, and so much more killing. Say my son's name. His death was the first thing to break me in and fly me through town. If grief has a body, it wears his Dodgers cap and still walks to the corner store to buy lottery tickets and Budweiser 40s. I don't like what I have to be here to be. All the blackbirds with nowhere to go keep leaving. Thank you.
Tyree, thank you so much. I'm so happy that this book is finally out in the world and that people can read it because it's so beautiful. And I don't actually think I'd heard you read the poems before, but I remember the first poem you read was the first poem I read in the book. And I just remember taking to it so much. And in all my pitch meetings, I was like, Tyree's, this has just written this amazing poem. You have to read this. I'm going to read it to you. And I would read it out loud to some of the reviewers because I just loved it so much. So thank you, Tyree. I really appreciate you. I appreciate your work. So I'm going to move us right along. Our next reader is Lewis Hyde. So Lewis will be reading from The Disappearing Ox, which is one of the most visually and philosophically stunning books we've published here at the press. Lewis Hyde is a poet, essayist, translator, and cultural critic, and the author of the modern classic, The Gift. He is a MacArthur Fellow and a former director of undergraduate creative writing at Harvard, and is a trustee of the MacDowell Colony, and a founding director of the Creative Capital Foundation. So Lewis, I will turn it over to you now.
Make sure I'm unmuted. Hi, you can hear me. Thank you so much, Laura, and thank you, Tyree, for your reading. So yes, this book is a collaboration, actually. It's called The Disappearing Ox, and I did this with an artist friend in New York named Max Gimblett, and Max is actually the person who got me started on this. So the ox herding series is a medieval Chinese set of drawings and poems, which are a parable about how to do a Buddhist practice. And traditionally it has had 10 drawings in which you see a poor young ox herder who's lost the beast he's supposed to be guarding, and he has to go find it and ride it and bring it home. And these drawings have traditionally been accompanied by 2 poems. One of them originally from the supposed first person who did the drawings, and one was a later student of his. And so Max has done new drawings for each of the 10 sets. And I have done new translations working with a scholar who actually knows the Chinese. I had to have a tutor to help me. And what we did for the translations, I'll show you one thing quickly. We made there are 4 different versions of each poem. There's the original Chinese, and then there's an English version which shows you how the Chinese is made. And then there's an English version which is just a simple, the simplest flat sense of what the poem might mean. And then there's a more poetic versions. So every poem has 3 English versions, and there are 2 poems for each drawing. So there's a total of 60 poems. And what I'm going to do is read the what are called the prefaces in the sort of final version that I made for each one of these. Searching for the ox. The ox is never really lost, so why hunt for it? No ox herd can see what he has turned his back on. 6 kinds of hunger have led him this way and that. What was home a moment ago is now a confusion of crossroads and dirt paths. Desire for gain and fear of loss circle like tongues of fire. An obsession with right and wrong marks everything, like a blade sharpened on both edges. Then the ox herd sees the traces of the ox, seeing the traces. Reading the sutras and hearing the teachings, he can sense the presence. No gold vessel is like any other, but all are made of gold. This man and this world, they are formed from the same stuff. Still, he wonders, shouldn't good and evil be set apart? Trying to separate out the truth, he ends in confusion. If there is a gate, he has not gone through it. Is there really something here, or is this just a joke? Then he gets a glimpse of the ox. He sees its tail or one of its horns or something. A glimpse of the ox. If he would only listen to everyday sounds, he would get it in a second. As for the senses, it was the cicada that made the ear. The thing itself is there no matter what we do. It's like the salt in water or the binder in paint. Rightly opened, the eye sees no difference between the worthy and the worthless. So then in the drawings, you see him catch the ox. He throws a rope around it or something like that, catching the ox. Today, the ox herd laid his hands on the ox. That beast, free since birth in high and uncut meadows, would rather go its own way. Sweet-smelling grasses muscled its back. No ring has ever pierced its nose. If the herder hopes to ride this ox, he will have to crack the whip. So then he has to tame the thing. There's a puzzle in this series about what the ox actually is. And our book has 2 essays that muse on this and one that's about the history of the ox series. So this is Taming the Ox. One thought rises in the mind, then another and another. When the ox herd is rightly awake, he watches their coming and going. When he sorts them right from wrong, a great confusion gathers. That tangle of crossroads lies inside the skull, not outside. Hold the nose rope firmly, or every rising thought will set it wandering. And then in the drawings, you see him riding on the back of the ox. So this is riding the ox home. The struggle is over. As for gain and loss, he can't remember what the problem was. Lying on the ox's back, he hums a forest tune. He plays flute songs learned in childhood. The sky seems larger than the earth. None of the 6 hungers can turn his head. Neither praise nor blame can divert him from his journey home. Then, and this is part of the mystery of what the ox is, the next one is called The Ox Forgotten, the self at home. On this path, one way is not 2 ways. All this talk about the ox is just a metaphor. Once you catch the rabbit, the snare may be abandoned. When the fish is caught, why stand there holding the net? See, like gold drawn from dross, like the moon risen from clouds, this world has always given off a simple light. So now the ox has been forgotten, and now the ox herder forgets himself too. Self and ox forgotten. This serenity scatters no light. No holiness appears. If he thinks he is a Buddha, it passes quickly. Proud that he is not a Buddha, that goes by too. 500 fully enlightened ancient ones cannot see anything special in the man. If 100 flower-bestowing birds circled his room, he'd just be embarrassed. So sometimes the ox herding series stops there with a kind of moment of enlightenment. And then in the series that we did, it has 2 more images and sets of poems. And they kind of come back to the world in 2 different ways. So this one's called Turning Back to First Nature. The dust never had any dust. Bodies grow and decay. Delusions form and dissolve. Identities come and go. Live in the still place between. It needs no improvement. The waters are blue. The mountains are green. Change without ending. Sit and watch. So the last image and poem called Entering the Village with Gift-Giving Hands. And typically the drawing shows a Japanese figure called Budai, who's kind of the Santa Claus of Buddhist tradition. He has a sack of gifts that he gives, and he comes into town, and you see him and somebody else. So it's 2 people. Max Gimblett, when he was working on these drawings, spent a long time to figure out. All of Max's drawings are they're gestural and somewhat abstract. Some of them are figurative. They're really an innovative and modern take on the old tradition. And so this is Max's final drawing, if I can show you. It just has 2, the typical circle in this series is called the Enso, but this has 2, so it's an image of 2 things in relationship to each other, as opposed to solitude. So this is Entering the Village with Gift-Giving Hands. He has closed the cabin gate behind him. Not even Dharma teachers notice as he walks by. He has left behind all the apparatus of spiritual life. He follows the path before him, not trying to match the footprints left by the ancient masters. He carries a gourd into town and comes home leaning on an old stick. When the fishmongers and tavern drinkers see him, they wake up. So that's the ox herding series.
Louis, thank you so much. What strikes me so much about this collection is that it's a book about translation. Like it's showing the reader how you've translated through art, through language, and I just think it's a true book of translation. I love that. So thank you for reading from it. And taking us through the project. It's you've taken on so much, so it's great. It's great to hear it read aloud.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure.
Oh, thank you. Jennifer Knox is our next reader. So Jennifer's hilarious and heartbreaking new book, Crushing It, will officially pub on October 27th. So you're getting a sneak peek. Jennifer L. Knox is the author of 4 other collections of poetry, and her poems have appeared in places such as the New York Times, the New Yorker, and Granta. She is the recipient of fellowships from the Iowa Arts Council and the Milwaukee County Arts Fund, and teaches at Iowa State University. Jennifer, take it away, if you will.
Thank you, Laura. Here's the book. It fits in your hand, so that's really good. But
Wow.
the type in it's tiny, so I'm going to read off pages. I'm honored to be here tonight and reading with Tyree and Louis and Alberto. Thank you. This is for my family, old women talking about death. When did I become one of them? I used to roll my eyes at their gory stories, EMTs found a neighbor at the bottom of her basement steps, a head-to-toe hematoma. Use a cane, I told her. Shrugs. Grandma and the great aunts itemized her injuries. Poor dear, how long till she was found? They told their stories picnicking atop our people at the cemetery, atop all the men in our family who died young. The rest disappeared. Shrugs. So no stories for them. These days, when I call Kay, she tells me about her friends who are dying or who have died since we last spoke, and I feel closer to her, an adult. Yesterday, Jay filled me in on M's cancer. It's bad, she whispered. I leaned forward. M's doctors removed her necrotic uterus through her abdomen in 2 jammy black hunks because her insides had decayed into a sarcomatous tar pit. Then her incision dehisced. I cocked my head. She made a starburst motion over her belly button. Ah, I've heard that happens with cancer, I said, grateful Z had described the process to me after her stepmother had died. Now I even have a name for that indignity. Thank God. I hate surprises. This poem, I wanted to write this poem for years after I saw a movie called Fast, Cheap, and Out of Control by Errol Morris. It's one of my favorite movies. And in it, he profiles 4 men with very unusual careers. One of them is a lion tamer. And in it, the lion tamer says that Clyde Beatty, he fell in love with lion taming by watching Clyde Beatty movies when he was a boy. And he said back then, people didn't know who would win in a battle of man versus nature. And that also happens to be the name of a Killdozer song, which is an 80s punk band, about Irwin Allen. So I'd always wanted to combine the two. And this is called Irwin Allen versus the Lion Tamer. We used to love lion tamers because people really didn't know who would win in a battle of man versus nature. Back then, all the stories ended in death, our death, by mauling or snake bite or dog bite or being struck by lightning, smothered by an avalanche, charged off a cliff, carried away in the talons of an eagle, inhaled by a whale, stung by a scorpion, swarmed by killer bees, gored by a rhino, poisoned by berries, pricked by a sticker, swallowed by quicksand, beguiled by a black cat, gobbled by a witch. So imagine the relief. With one flick of the whip and an up, the skulking lion stands on legs like a human. Its toothy protest, no big thing. After all those years of fear, I'd laugh at it too. And that's what people did until there were no more lions to laugh at. But Irwin Allen knew death doesn't live in a thing you can kill with a gun. It's not the heat, it's the hubris. The fire that wipes the city out begins in birthday candles and the happy huff behind them. The storm that flips the cruise ship starts in the sea that rises up to fill the empty sky. An airplane crash begins not in birds, but in the feeders we've stolen the seed from. Certain nobody can see us. Passion of the pollinators. The Russian sagebush in the driveway's gone berserko, shooting shoots like fireworks, some 10 feet long in all directions. Oh, and the whole thing smells like BO. Go figure. Flora rivaling Disney's froofiest princess reeks like teenage pits. Green, gray, frilly stalks droop under all the bewitched bumblebees, rocking the pollen-packed purple flower clusters. Stems sway back beneath their unbuckable buzz. The bees have dumped a thick carpet of petals onto the concrete in the same shape as the bush's undulating shadow. A purple shadow peppered with a few dead bees. The shadow's a portrait the bees painted of their love. A painting worth dying for, titled "This Shit Right Here." When I walk by, they follow close as if to say, "Keep walking, bozo." After dark, there's sleeping sheep in it. My headlights glint off their black, unblinking eyes. This is dedicated to the one I love. We told ourselves we did it for the next room over in the Natural History Museum, the roped off one they'd been hammering on forever. But really, we did it for the money, for money's machinations that kept the crude, rude, and boiling. The money was born a baby with our face. Aw. We sang to it, and as it grew into a whirly gig of gas spouts, we sang louder, splitting into harmonies like air show jets, doo-wopping with our waists cinched in rubber bands to hit the inhumane high notes. We laughed about it at Mama Cass's backyard picnic. We laughed about everything. It was that kind of picnic. We were all really connected, you know? Talking about the next shape clouds would shift into. This was back when the baby had our face, not our absences, our unwindings. And last poem is for my Aunt Marilyn, who, even though we're all here on Zoom, if she were here, we'd be having 100% of a better time. Marilyn, every day we wonder what you'd think about all this. I imagine you crashing through the inaugural barricades or flying a stolen helicopter into a wildfire with a margarita gripped between your knees. Remember, gridlocked on the 5, you winked at a bearded dude leaning on the asphalt roller. I'd only seen women wink at men in movies. He leered, "I might get laid." And you drawled, "Why don't you get that piece of shit out of the road?" Shock splashed across his face. "Lock the doors. Crazy, bitch," he roared and punched our hood, clueless how close he was to getting his ass shot. We found the loaded gun under your mattress, Smith & Wesson, cowgirl style, swirly pearl handle, and the serial number filed off. We like to take it out at parties. What a cute gun. We also found several transistor radios and a box of old weed. Cheers, Auntie. With one phone call, you scared my scary Brooklyn landlord into fixing my deadbolt. You were 6 states away and a 72-year-old woman. There's a pack of kids down the street in a house that's falling apart. We never see an adult. No matter how cold or dark it is, they're always playing outside with a new puppy. We have no idea where the old puppies have gone, but if you were here, we know there'd be no more of this new puppy bullshit. Thanks.
Jennifer, that was wonderful. I mean, that last poem, there's so much life there. And like that, just hearing you read it is so great.
That was fun.
Yeah. I think that's the best compliment you can give anybody is if you were here, we would be having 100% better of a time. That if anybody wants to flatter me ever, please say that. That is the best compliment. Well, I thank you for reading, and I'm so excited for your book to be out. Let's see, not next week, but the following week. I'm excited.
Me too.
Let's see, our last reader. How are we already here? Our last reader is Alberto Rios. Today, Alberto will read from his new book, Not Go Away Is My Name, published earlier this year. Alberto Rios, Arizona's inaugural poet laureate and a recent chancellor of the Academy of American Poets, is the author of 12 collections of poetry. Published in the New Yorker, Paris Review, Plowshares, and other journals, he has also written 3 short story collections and a memoir. Rios has taught at Arizona State University since 1982. I could say a lot more about you, Alberto, but I'm just going to let you read and take it away.
Well, thank you so much, Laura, and thank you, Copper Canyon Press. And I'm just so happy to be part of this group of writers. You're all wonderful. Jennifer and Tyree and Lewis, thank you all for what you added to the night. So I say to everybody, welcome. Bienvenidos todos. Wild days. I know, you know, we all know. So many things are in the public sphere right now. And the other side of that is so many things have been dropped. I grew up in Arizona on the border, which is something that is important to me that used to be part of the immediate conversation. I don't know where it is right now. Let me start with a poem called Border Boy. I grew up on the border, and though I left, I've brought it with me wherever I've gone. Its line guides me, this long, winding thread of memory. The border wasn't as big as they say. It fit neatly behind my eyes and between my ears. It guides me still, I know, but it's not a compass. It's not a place out there, but a place in here. I catch on its barbed wire in both places. It is a line I step over and a ledge I duck under. I've looked underneath its skirts and it has caught me many times. We're old friends and we play the game well. When someone says border now or frontera or the line, la línea or the fence or whatever else we name the edge and the end of things, I hear something missing in those words. What it all used to be. Its name does not include its childhood. I grew up liking the border and its great scar, the drama always good for a story, the way scars always are. A scar is the place where the hurting used to be. A scar, the heroic signature of the healed. The border is not a scar. Instead, it's something we keep picking at, something that has no name. The border I knew was something with a history, but this thing now, it is a stranger, even to itself. Well, the border and all of the things that go on at the border, very complex. Immigration, emigration, tourism, the produce industry, so many things that go on there, including drug cartels and violence, but also people living workaday lives, regular people who don't move away. Those lives too count for, I think, everything. This poem is about that complexity. It's called I Do Not Go Away. You have terror, and I have tears. In this cruel way, we are for each other. We are at war. You always win. But I do not go away. You shoot me again. Again, I do not go away. You shoot with bullets, but you have nothing else. I fight back. I shoot you with fragments of childhood where you played the hero. I shoot you with memories of your mother and your little sister, Maritza. I shoot you with spring in the rolling mountains and the taste of plantain bananas with sugar. You do not fall down dead You can kill me, where all I can do is hold up the mirror of remembering to you. The mirror of everything you have done. You set fire to me with gasoline. I set fire to you with the memory of your first love. You cut my hands off. I cut your hands off with the way you saw them disappear when you were diving into the warm water of the lake, the summer of swimming with your brother. Do you remember the names of the left for dead, the damaged, the hounded, the hurt? Do you remember my name? Your fist is hard. My name is crying. You strike a match. My name is cringe. You lift your foot. My name is pain. You wake up. My name is closed eyes. Your smile mimics the size of the opening on the side of a head, a crude opening that a mean needle will stitch up tonight. Your arm laughs at me with its muscle. All this, all these tears you have made, this water you have found in the desert, all this blood you have drawn from the bodies of so many who needed it. You win. You have always won. All I can do is not go away. Not go away is my name. Well, things aren't always that dire. I have a lot of hope. That hope may not be in this world, and I don't mean anything particularly strange by that. I mean distant planets or wherever we might find it. This poem is called The Secret in the Mirror. The mirror is dirty from the detritus of dailiness. I look in the mirror and am suddenly freckled. A week out from being cleaned, maybe two, maybe more, the Milky Way shows itself in the secret silver. This star chart in my own bathroom, aglow not in darkness, but with the lights on. Everything suddenly so clear. It is not smear I'm looking at, but galaxies. It is not toothpaste and water spots. When I look in the mirror, it is writing and numbers, musical notes, ones and zeros, Morse-like codes, runes. I am looking over into the other side. And over there, whoever they are, it turns out they look a lot like me, but freckled. Well, I want to read a poem specifically for our pandemically challenged times. When I wrote this poem, its title didn't mean what it probably means today, but I take great hope from it still. This poem is called Don't Go Into the Library. The library is dangerous. Don't go in. If you do, you know what will happen. It's like a pet store or a bakery. Every single time you'll come out of there holding something in your arms. Those novels with their big eyes and wagging tails, those no-nonsense, all-muscle Dobermans, all nonfiction and business, cuddly when they're young, but then the first page is turned and no turning back. And those sleek, fast, beautiful greyhounds, poems. The donut scent of it all, knowledge, the aroma of coffee being made in all those books, something for everyone, the deli offerings of civilization itself. The library is the book of books. Its concrete and wood and glass covers, keeping within them the very big, very long story of everything. The library is dangerous, full of answers. If you go inside, you may not come out the same person who went in. I have two more poems. Laura, you were asking me if it was still light here in Arizona when we first signed in, and in fact, there is so much light here. This poem is called "We Are of a Tribe." We plant seeds in the ground and dreams in the sky, hoping that someday the roots of one will meet the upstretched limbs of the other. It hasn't happened yet. We share the sky, all of us, the whole world, together. We are a tribe of eyes that look upward, even as we stand on uncertain ground. The earth beneath us moves, quiet and wild, its boundaries shifting, its muscles wavering. The dream of sky is indifferent to all this, impervious to borders, fences, reservations. The sky is our common home, the place we all live. There, we are in this world together. The dream of sky requires no passport. Blue will not be fenced. Blue will not be a crime. Look up. Stay a while. Let your breathing slow. Know that you always have a home here. And I want to finish with a poem that is really maybe for younger listeners, or perhaps the younger listeners inside each of us. This poem is called "A House Called Tomorrow." You are not 15 or 12 or 17. You are 100 wild centuries and 15, bringing with you in every breath and in every step, everyone who has come before you, all the yous that you have been, the mothers of your mother, the fathers of your father. If someone in your family tree was trouble, 100 were not. The bad do not win, not finally, no matter how loud they are. We simply would not be here if that were true. You are made fundamentally from the good. With this knowledge, you never march alone. You are the breaking news of the century. You are the good who has come forward through it all, even if so many days feel otherwise. But think, when you as a child learned to speak, it's not that you didn't know words. It's that from the centuries, you knew so many, and it's hard to choose the words that will be your own. From those centuries, we human beings bring with us the simple solutions and songs, the river bridges and star charts and song harmonies, all in service to a simple idea that we can make a house called tomorrow. What we bring finally into the new day, every day, is ourselves. And that's all we need to start. That's everything we require to keep going. Look back only for as long as you must. Then go forward to write the history you will make. Be good, then better. Write books. Cure disease. Make us proud. Make yourself proud. And those who came before you, when you hear thunder, hear it as their applause. Thank you all.
Alberto, thank you so much. Your reading voice and style always reminds me of a sermon or something godly. So I'm lucky to be around it. I appreciate you reading, and I'm glad the light held up in your room. So we've reached that Q&A time, which is my favorite, maybe not favorite, but you know, I really love having you all here and getting to ask you questions and things like that. But you know, I welcome and invite, you know, the audience questions for the last little bit of our reading. And as I said earlier, if you do have questions for our poets, we invite you to type them into the Q&A feature, which is at the bottom of your Zoom screen. But as you were all reading, you know, well, actually, before you were reading, we were talking about how so many of you are teachers. And as you were reading, you know, I was very inspired by your readings. I know a lot of your teachers and having to inspire people via Zoom from afar. And that sounds very exhausting and very tiring. So I'm curious, you know, what, if anything, is inspiring you these days? What's feeding you? How are you, you know, sourcing this energy to inspire these days? Because that's a lot to put on somebody in these times. So I'm just curious.
I'm sure we can all answer this in very different ways, but on a personal note, I have a relatively new granddaughter. She's about to turn 2. And in the last poem I was reading, I was talking about learning language and learning, you have all these words, and she's right at that point. And I have to say, it takes me back to, not to childhood necessarily, but to a place called childhood, where I was learning those words too. And as a teacher, that helps me to articulate not just a dictionary-like sense of words, but a lived life sense of words. And beyond that, a discovery of them, which I think makes all the difference in the world. And I think teaching is so often making connections, and words help us to do that.
I've been reading Henry Thoreau's journals. So I'm reading 1852, and every morning I read what Henry Thoreau was doing on the same day in 1852, which is interesting. The weather was a little, the climate has shifted about 2 weeks since Henry lived. But also there's a famous moment in his journals when the fugitive slave law has been passed and he's really going nuts. They're capturing a fugitive slave in Boston, and Thoreau finds that he cannot go walking in the woods and get this out of his head. And I'm afraid the rest of my time, when I'm not reading Henry Thoreau, I can't get current politics out of my head. So I've been actually, as I spent 4 hours yesterday on the Maine voter protection hotline. So that's what I'm doing.
I've been carving a lot of pumpkins.
Oh yes, that's amazing.
We're not talking 2 or 3, lots of pumpkins. And answering a lot of email questions from my students and just letting them pass through me. Trying to meet them like Jell-O. Like if I know the answer to this, I can give it and I can just let it go through me and hopefully make them feel more comfortable in asking. So that moment of engagement has been has made me happier about teaching. Whether it's, do you know where this button is on Zoom, from just the whole gamut of answers. If I can answer it, I feel really good.
I've been, reading and attending events like this has been really great. And, I know we're in this situation, but it's also nice, because we get to attend all these events, right? I can go see all these poets that I love in 1 week. And, as far as the teaching, it's creating a new type of intimacy, right, online. Still the same type of poetics, but trying to reach them, I guess, through the screen. And, and I do like parts of Zoom and poetry classes, because I'm a type of writer that I don't like people to see me when I'm writing. So you can mute your screen and mute yourself, right? And then come back on and share your work. So there's, there's parts that work out as well.
Man, I love that. That's a very positive way of looking at Zoom. Yeah, well, Jennifer, I want to say I would love to see these pumpkins. I hope you Instagram them or show them to us somehow, because
Okay.
I'm curious as to how many, and I'm on the edge of my seat.
How would I think I can I can do that.
Yeah, good. And Alberto, congratulations on your 2-year-old. That's really exciting. Learning language in that way with someone in that way is so exciting. So I have a question in our Q&A that I'm going to read out. And it's from Ruben. And Ruben asks, how might all of your poems translate places and experiences? The border, North Carolina, an ant being absolutely badass, and of course, ox herding stories from medieval China. How might the act of translation be broader than simply taking a poem from one language and recreating it in another? So I'm curious, do you all associate, obviously, Louis, you will probably associate with translation in your work, but do you, Alberto, Tyree, and Jennifer, do you associate with kind of translation in your work?
I work with translation every day, every moment, and I grew up in a multilingual household, and not only that, physically on the border, which gave me, in a weird way, that's a very American place to be, because you're always having to choose, and choice is the great American luxury, right? So, but for me, it was having to choose maybe words. And what is so interesting is that if I hold up this pen and I only have the word pen for it, I own it, I'm done, I can move on to paper or whatever. But if I have to stop, even if only for a millisecond, and know that it's also for me, a pluma, who am I talking to? Where am I going to go? I suddenly have to look at it slightly longer. And speaking a little French, if it's a pluma, I know it's also a plume. And if it's got 3 names, 3 ways to be looked at, 3 civilizations who couldn't agree on what that was and looked at it in different ways, maybe there's 10 names for it. And if there's 10, maybe there's 100, and suddenly this pen is wild in my hand. And I think that's what translation is about. And it's not translation. There's a creative moment that translation tries to, I think, ride, get on, and be part of. And I think it's somewhere in that connection of things. So.
I would just say also that actually translating these poems from Chinese, translation for me is a way of becoming really intimate with someone else's work without having to write an essay about it or intellectualizing it. And, Max and I spent actually 20 years off and on working on this project. And so you get to inhabit the world of the original in a way that you can't simply reading it once in in the original or even in some foreign language. So there's a kind of intimacy to actual translation.
It just occurred to me, it's like putting on somebody else's clothes.
I like that. Oh, yeah, go Teddy.
If I'm answering this right, when I think of the translation of image to meaning, so to make meaning of these images, right? So that, to me, my poetics usually work as, you know, let's go with a bird, right? A bird flies by, and I'll see that bird, and that will spark a memory, and so I'll try to make meaning of that image, usually through like a past memory, and that idea of translating. So making meaning is usually how I think of translation.
I love that. Yeah, making meaning, Alberto, making multiple meanings, making, you know, umpteenth amounts of meanings, inhabiting different Lewis or Lewis kind of getting more into, or as Jennifer says, wearing somebody else's clothes, getting more intimate with the text. I think that those are all beautiful answers. I appreciate them. Thank you. Elijah has a question for you, Jennifer, if you're up for another question.
Sure.
Elijah says, I love when poets find ways to incorporate humor in their poems. How difficult is it for you to use humor as a tool / style in your work? And what does humor allow in your process? And obviously this was directed at you, Jennifer, but please, you know, Tyree, Lewis, Alberto, chime in if you'd like.
Well, certainly, if I didn't feel, it was something that I felt compelled to do. It wasn't something that I thought, I should do this, because it is a sort of a rare element. There's many different kinds of humor, and the one that I'm most drawn to is the incongruity theory of humor, which isn't necessarily funny. It's, you have to establish a theme in the poem so that people feel that they're following you long enough that when you turn the wheel, it feels like a surprise. So for me, I'm drawn to the surprise of it. And poetry is one place that unfamiliar subjects and diction, they really stand out. So that's always been, I've always been drawn to that. And it's one of the reasons that I've been drawn to poetry.
It's interesting. I was watching a lot of, or have been watching a lot of stand-up comedy lately, and I'm really struck by the similarities between poetry and stand-up comedy in terms of like the turn of a poem following a narrative and then turning that on its head, and just the close attention you have to pay to diction and timing and just kind of pace. It's all it's more similar than I would have ever thought. So yeah.
Who have you been watching comedians?
Too many people, truly. I watched The King of Staten Island the other day because I just like hadn't seen it and it was on, and so I watched some of his stand-up comedy, which the pace was not my pace. It was very monotone in pace, and but that's the most recent one I've watched. Are any of you a comedy fans at all? Yeah, Alberto, double hands for Alberto. Alberto, and double hands for you, Jennifer. Okay. Do you see similarities between stand-up and poetry at all, or am I crazy?
I think Jennifer's going to jump in, but if I can just say, I even teach that. I'm such a believer in stand-up comics so often doing a better job of poetry than poets who are setting out to write the poem. And it's not that stand-up comics are poets necessarily, but they show us something about language that is huge. And when you find a comedian that you connect with, I think of somebody like Stephen Wright. And I remember the first time, and every time I tell this joke, nobody laughs. And I don't know what his reaction is, but it's his joke. And he said, I just recently read the dictionary. I don't want to give anything away, but the zebra did it. You just have to get that it's at the Z, it's at the, it just, I love that. And it helps me understand something about breaking through in language and intellect and all of the things that we have to do. It's that comedians just make us laugh at that moment, where I think poetry will make us feel, a bunch of different things, including humor.
Also, a good joke has structure, and so does a good poem.
Yeah, that is very true. I'm curious. Let's see. Oh, we have some more questions in our Q&A. Do you guys have time for a couple more questions? How are you feeling?
Jennifer, I didn't mean to jump on your...
No. Good. I love it. I would just add that nobody laughs because it's a Stephen Wright joke. You never laugh at
Oh, man.
Right that I got.
I'm going to have to go in a few minutes, but let's take a few more questions.
Okay. That sounds good, Louis. Let's see. Well, I guess I'm trying to think of some that are maybe a little shorter. So Tyree, you said that you were going to a lot more readings, or maybe not more, but you were able to attend and see poetry, because it's on Zoom. You can see it perhaps more often and stay connected in that way. Do you all feel like, how are you staying connected to other poets during this time? Is it through readings? Has it gone more intimate in terms of like email or calls, or have you stayed connected? I know none of us are at AWP or, at readings physically together. So I'm curious, how are you creating community, if at all?
Well, every Sunday I meet with 4 or 5 other poets, and we give each other words and we write a poem for about 30 minutes, and then we come back and we share. So that's one way.
That's nice.
And then, I've always had my, I think all poets kind of have their, I guess you can call them friends too. They're friends that they also, they send work to, they call just to talk, and, it's just a natural human thing to find a way, right, to stay connected. So
I also think, since the beginning of the pandemic, I've been calling friends who I might not have called as regularly, and also contacting them with video screens because I like to see people. And so there's been a kind of reaching out to share our troubles and then move on.
Yeah, Louis, I've been doing that too. I'm not a phone person. I don't like the phone. I love to text, not the phone though. But now I'm on the phone constantly. I'm on Zoom constantly, reaching out to people who I might have not otherwise. So yeah. Well, I think it is, let's see. I think it is time to maybe wrap the Q&A up. I appreciate everybody's questions. I appreciate all of your answers and being so present and attentive for each other. I loved all the claps when each of you were reading. You were so engaged with each other's work, which is just so warming. So thank you, all of you out there, for joining us today and coming together across, time zones and geography in the name of poetry. And we're hoping you all stay safe and well, and we're grateful and just sending you our best. And again, you can buy any of these books through Estelita's Library, our bookselling partner for this event. It's a Black and Brown owned bookstore and library based in Seattle. And we'll drop those details again into the chat. And you can also visit our website to find more information about our brilliant authors, And you're welcome to find the button that says donate if you want to support us here at the press. So we will be back in February with another live stream featuring Natalie Shapiro, Alex Dimitrov, and Aaron Ballou, who all have books coming out in February. And we hope to see you all there. Thank you, poets. Thank you, attendees. I appreciate you all so much, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful evening.
And thank you, Copper Canyon. Yay.
Thank you all.